Okay, hi everyone. Can someone just confirm that they can see my Figma screen?
Yep, can see your screen.
Cool. Um, Maybe a good place to start would be to just go over a little bit about variables first. Let me share my whole screen actually so that I don't have to swap. This is desktop too. Cool. Okay. So variables were introduced this year. They are incredible, super powerful, but very much still a beta feature, and it kind of shows. It makes it, there's a lot of sort of things to complain about. One of them being, it basically means if you want to use this for color, you kind of have to rewrite your color libraries in this new system. Right? There's not a lot of easy ways to just sort of transfer it over. But having said that, it's well worth the effort. So we won't go through everything today. We're just going to go through a couple of quick examples of some very interesting things you can do with them, which you probably shouldn't. Realistically, what I'm going to show you, you should not try to do because it is a bit bonkers and did my head in more than I'm willing to admit. So let me give this a quick run. And thank you, Devin, for helping me set this up. So we have built out this little game. So just a little tic-tac-toe game, and you can definitely do more. And I'll show you something that someone else had done, where they've certainly done more than I did. This is a little tic-tac-toe. So you click on a thing, gives you an X. The next thing you click on will be an O. So a nice little interactive, fun thing. And I'm going to pretend to be useless at this on the X's and win on the O's. And it tells me O's have won. And if I try it again, I click X here. I'm going to make the X's win this time. No, I'm not. I'm useless at this game. There we go. And X's win. Right. So how do we achieve that without being programmers, right? It's incredibly difficult to do that if you are not writing Python or C# or something, right? So this is where you would almost want to go to a developer and say, please make this for me. But we don't want to do that because we just don't want to do that. So how do we do it in Figma? Well, there's a couple of things that you can you would need to do to get this started. The first thing you'll need to do is pay Figma lots of money in the form of I think it's just the standard paid plan. You can go from, is it called professional? I think it's called professional. You don't have to go up to the sort of like the corporate plans, but you do need a paid plan in order to deal with conditional logic, which is the basis of our prototype here. So in prototyping mode, you'll see I've got a couple of pieces. I'm not going to rewrite this from scratch in front of you because that's way too much work. But I will give you a bit of a tour of exactly what's going on here. So we've got a couple of components. Let's start off with the cell component. So the cell component is a variable set, is a variant set, which includes C1 through 9. So all of these have the name C1, C2, C3, C4, C5, C9, right? I made a CW because I was trying something, but it didn't work. I found a much easier way. I'll show you what that is. If the other thing that we have is we have an O symbol, and that's the capital letter O, not a 0. And a capital X, right? So that's the cell set that we have. Then at the bottom here, we've got these components called cells, and the property of this component is C1. So when you create a new, if I were to drag a component down, you would see that it says C7, right? But right next to it, there is an assign variable button. And if you click this, you can assign the variable C7, which means that whatever the value of that variable is, will become the variant that is prescribed. Now, the reason that the way that this is sort of set up, it's a little confusing, but it has to basically be the same name, right? So you want the same name in the variable name as in the value, right? So you're going to take the values and you're going to make those exactly the same as your cell name. Now, the reason that we do this is so that we can create some conditional logic, which basically says on each cell, on click, if C1 is equal to C1, as in if the variable C1 has the value C1, then do the following. Set the variable C1 to the current player. The current player is either 0 or X. If you look at the bottom of this, it says if the current player is X, then set the current player to 0. Otherwise, set the current player to X. So we know that either it's an O or an X that is the current player. And every time you click, you're changing the current player because you're changing whose turn it is to play, right? So the very last thing that you do after all of this other stuff is you change whose turn it is. So this whole group here is change whose turn it is. The group at the top here is change this symbol from a blank. So in this case, the C1 is the blank to whatever the current player is. And the current player is either an X or an O, because we've got a local variable here. Currently, so it always starts at X, but as soon as you click, that's going to change to O. It's going to pick up that the value there, either X or O, is the same as the name of the variant in this set. So it's either going to be O or X, and it's going to change this to, if we were to break this, it would change it to an X or it would change it to an O, right? So that's all we're doing. So let's just change that back to C1. Now, it's a really great example of poor programming, and it was done very quickly. And there are, I'm sure, a lot better ways to do this. Now, you know that it's done poorly because the first rule of programming is don't repeat yourself. And there's a lot of repeating ourselves, because not only do we have this massive set of logic on this button, but we in fact have it on all subsequent buttons. So all the buttons have the same logic. Now, there is a way, if I were to, let's just delete all of the logic here. Well, I hope I can get this right, because if I can't get this right, I'm in for trouble. Actually, let's just kill this whole thing. So I've got no logic on this button, right? What you can do is you can go to another button. You can select it here, just like you would select your fill or your stroke or anything else, copy paste, right? So you copy this and you paste it here. And there's only a couple of things that we need to change. So first, instead of C2 here, we need to change this C2 to, I'm just going to rewrite it. That's easier because the pop-ups get a bit janky. So C2, the variable, equals, which is their, which is a common sort of.
Could this be C3?
Thank you. Sorry, you just stopped me from making a massive mistake. There we go.
Why isn't it working?
If C3 is C3, in other words, if this button is blank, then set C3, or this button, to whatever the current player is, so whether that's an X or whether that's an O. Cool, so that's that set. Now let's get to this chunky middle section here where it says if C1 equals C2 and C2 equals C3. That is basically the win logic, right? So in order to win at noughts and crosses, you either need to have C1, 5, and 9, C3, 5, and 7, C1, 2, 3, C4, 5, 6, C7, 8, 9, or the verticals 1, 4, 7, 2, 5, 8, 3, 6, 9. So, and did I just give up on making the things? Yeah, I gave up on making the things, but you get it. So those are the pieces. It's all of those. That's why you need this set that says if 4 equals 5 and 5 equals 6, etc. Because when you are, let me actually show you what this is a little debugging tool that I created. So all of these pieces of text over here, they're not real pieces of text. They're not just like I've written ASDF, right? These pieces of text are in fact just printing out whatever the values are in my local variables. So if I take this and I put them on the board, we can see in real time what happens to the variables. So let's run this. Let me zoom in a bit here if I can. Yeah. So I click this and that goes to X. I click there, that changes to O. So those are the variables. So once I get this X, if I do it properly, that's an X, that's an O, that's an X. There we go. The one piece I haven't figured out is what happens when you draw. Can I draw? Is that even possible? Yes, it is. If I go like that, I go like that, I go like that, there, draw. So now it's telling me X1s because I can't do it right.
Harder than it looks, huh?
It is actually hard to
intentionally mess up.
Yeah, you have to. It's because I'm not.
Yeah, that is a draw.
I'm not telling you whose turn it is, right? So I need to find a way to tell you whose turn it is. So that's maybe something good we can do.
But it is helpful to see the actual variables at the top there changing. It kind of demystifies it a little bit.
Absolutely. So I've got this little skull icon. If you click the skull icon, everything resets. And the way that I do that is close this. The way that I reset everything is I just say set C1 back to C1, C2 back to C2, and so forth. So all of the little blocks will just go back to their sort of base set, their base sort of view like this. Let's very quickly make a button or make something that says whose turn it is to play. So we've already picked a wacky font, and this font we're using for this, whoever's white wins, right? So this piece of text over here, it's looking at the winner. It needs to look at the current player, and let's say it's that person's turn. And then that will hopefully make it a bit easier to see what's going on. Let's play that. So it's X's turn, it's O's turn, it's X's turn. That's a little bit better. Now, what if we want to be a bit more descriptive and we want to actually show the image instead of just that piece of text? Well, what we can do is what we've done here. So remember that this image is actually just part of the cell set. So we can take this. What I've done here is I've said that the property here is the variable winner. And so I can actually just take that. I can say it's X's turn. I can even make that, I think I can make that scale and it shouldn't have problems. Let's have a look. Maybe I'm wrong. X's turn. Oh, now it's not working. That's interesting. Why? What did I do wrong? Oh, it's not winner, it's current player. So I need to break it and then say current player. And then if I play it goes X's, O's, X's, O's, X's, O's, X's, O's. Cool. Great. Now, the last thing, and we're probably going to be quite short this month. We're not going to go for an hour and a half or anything. We're probably just, I've got maybe 5 minutes more to show you, and then we can have a bit of a chat, and then we can go about our days. The other thing I wanted to very quickly talk about is color. And so I've got this little sun over here, and it's part of a set. So and I didn't make these graphics, by the way. These are off Envato, so it's not my artwork. But I've got a little sun and a little moon. I think I did actually make the sun because they didn't have a sun. It's not a normal thing in a Halloween set to have a sun. I think it was originally like a magic ball. But anyway, I've got a little sun that says yes, and a little moon that says yes, and a little sun that says no. So is it dark, yes or no? The other thing that I've done with local variables, besides the mechanics that you see here, is that I've used them for colors. So there's lots of different ways to do this, but the way that I've worked out the colors is as follows. I have my set of primitive colors. So these are the colors in their sort of bare bones form, their hex code form. I've got a color for none, I've got a color for lilac, for orange, etc. And then I have another set of colors which are dynamic colors. And you'll see that I've grouped them into light mode and dark mode. And what that essentially allows you to do is do a very basic version of design tokens. The kinds of pieces of logic where you can say, okay, well, this is the background color. Depending on your theme, this is what you would use. So if you... sorry, was that a question? No? Okay. So the way I can show you this is right now, this main component here has got a light mode selected. So the way that you change your theme is you go to your layer, you select your layer, you say within dynamic colors, would you like it to be light or dark? So I've chosen light here. If I were to copy this and I were to change this to dark mode, you see, because I've set everything up nicely, everything has gone to plan, except it hasn't because that sun isn't working. So let me go back to that sun and see what's wrong. So that sun, I've got the orange. You can see there's a box around it, which tells me that it is using a correct color, but I'm not using a variant here. So if I change this variant to not the primitive, but rather the dynamic colors, I've got a color for illustration line art. I change that. Even though you haven't seen it change here, it does change here. And I can do the same thing for this little set. Instead of black, we'll say that this is, what did we say? Illustration line art. Do the same here, illustration line art, selection colors, illustration line art. There we go. So it's sort of browny, dark browny here, and it's sort of bluey over here. Cool. So all I have to do now is just sort of link these up so that if I switch between the sun and the moon, that works. So you'll see in the moon, the orange has disappeared. I didn't really like how it looked with the orange sort of fill. So in my local variables, I've set up the illustration detail color. In light mode, it's orange, but in dark mode, it's actually just none. It's blank. It's white with a 100% transparency or a 0% opacity. So it's just no color. Which
never crossed my mind that you could do that.
Yeah, the
That's
one
handy.
there's lots of things I kind of wish it would do, but that is the one thing that's really nice is you can do some kind of transparency in your colors. And so the only thing left to do is just do a normal piece of prototyping that we're kind of used to, which is just drag this here and say on click, navigate, smart animate. And then if I click this thing, navigate, smart animate. And why does that say on drag? Because it's on click. Why is it on click? It's setting a variable. What variable is it setting? It doesn't need to set a variable. That is unnecessary, I hope. We'll see. Maybe it was necessary. Who knows? We'll find out. Okay, so if I click that, it goes to dark mode. Isn't that nice? Just very easy. And you'll notice, like, I didn't want the little nose to be orange in the dark one, and so I made it a different. I made it the illustration variable set, which means that it'll just disappear. I didn't want the moon to be orange, so that disappears as well. The smart animate stuff can be a bit janky. So these two big lines coming up are a bit weird, but it's not the end of the world. It's just for illustration purposes anyway. But it also means that we can play this game and then halfway through decide, actually, we don't really like dark mode, and it will keep our place. It'll keep exactly where we are, and it all just works fine. So the one thing I haven't really figured out, and maybe there is a way to do it, but you'll see that I have made the winning thing in such a way that it sort of kind of works for both dark mode and light mode, right? I haven't yet figured out, and I'm not the expert in this by any means, so I'm not pretending to be the best at this. This kind of just came out recently anyway, and we all have day jobs, so we can't be, spending all our time doing this. But I haven't figured out how one might make a separate winners for dark mode and light mode. Because it doesn't take on the effects of its parent panel. So it doesn't take on the theme of its parent panel. It's almost as though you would have to, in your logic here, and I really didn't want to do this, but in each one of these pieces of winner logic, you would have to say, add another, you see, you can't even add another conditional. So you'd have to have separate conditionals that say, if C1 and C2 and C2 and C3 are all equal, and the theme is set to this, then open the dark winner overlay, or open the light winner overlay. But to be honest, that's just a little bit too far. I think this whole thing is too far, and you shouldn't use variables like this, except for explanation of how variables work, because it's just an insane amount of work and just not worth it.
Yeah, but it's fun. It's like people painting with Excel spreadsheets.
It does have that.
Not the tool for it, but
yeah. Now, if you think I'm crazy, I want to show you this version. This is something that we Devin found online. Just unbelievable graphics, just beautiful graphics, right? So it's got like this little shadow which tells you which one you're about to put down. So this is an X, and this is an O, and this is a X, that's an O, X, O. I mean, it's just incredibly beautiful detail. And it also solves my problem of what happens in a draw. So it is actually a bit buggy, if I'm being honest, because if you go a bit too fast, sort of messes out. So you can go really fast and sort of mess it up a bit. Okay, so yeah, it's a draw. So you've managed to.
At least it's a beautiful F up.
It is very pretty. I mean, they certainly did all sorts of things that I didn't think about, like maybe you want to swap turns. It also shows you what your total wins is. and it keeps that running score, right? So this person is 1 0 of 2, this person's 1 0 of 2. So if we make that should have been O. Interesting. And this should be O.
You broke it.
Yeah.
Maybe all your multi-clicking did break it. Restart the prototype.
Yeah. So if you press next round now, it's keeping your score. So it says, okay, you've won 1 of 1, they've won 0 of 1. And maybe what we'll do is we'll actually share this. We'll share this link and you can have a look and see if you can find it. But we spent a good couple of hours trying to figure out where this person has hidden his conditional logic, because it's not here. So he's got this conditional logic that says, very similar to ours, if A2, so they don't call it C2, they call it A2, is 0, and the person's turn is X, then set the variable for cells /A2, so is A2 cell, to A2 plus 1. And then I think for the planets or the O's, they're using 9. So they're doing that same thing of, if these 3 cells are 999 or 111, then you've won. But we cannot find where he actually puts that logic of, I now have cell 1, cell 4, cell 7, etc. The list that we had in ours. We cannot for the life of us find it. So have a look. It's on community. It's called Tic-Tac-Toe Variables. It is by, who is it by?
I just posted the link into the chat if anybody's interested.
Thank you.
It's I cannot pronounce his name. Fasu Kaban.
Yeah, incredible. Sure. An incredible designer. He's got a couple of fantastic looking pieces of sort of component magic. But yeah, we've been racking our heads trying to figure out how exactly he does this. Because what we see in the logic here isn't all of it. These are all resets. This is just a condition that turns. So he's got a ticker component here, which is, if you've ever done programming, you might know about the sort of while true statement, or the I can't remember what it's called in Python, but it's sort of, there's things that happen at the very beginning, and there's things that happen sort of every frame, right? You can check X at every frame. And we can't seem to find that. So if you can find it, let us know. But it's a beautiful piece of work regardless.
Yeah, I feel like this is, it comes back around to, as you said, Figma is not really designed for making games. Like, that's not what the variables were built for. So they're a little bit obfuscated or unclear.
Absolutely.
Like they don't show the relations between your variables and your actual like things on the page.
Absolutely, yeah. So yeah, I can share this. I can share this as a link if you'd like to copy it and play with it. Although, can I? I guess
maybe
I can.
Not.
Again. That's scary. I've never published anything on. I think we should probably do that more often.
Maybe. First time for everything.
Yeah. And there's.
It's taking the background. Yeah.
Yeah.
Delete that page.
No, well, it's a good piece of research. Do you want to go? Should it go through this?
We can briefly go through it.
Sure. So on the first page, you will see an explanation that we put together about WCAG versus APCA, which may be the last thing we'll talk about. So for those unfamiliar with this incredible component, this incredible tool, I've still got all my Halloween colors, so that helps. If you search plugins, you'll find a plugin called Contrast. Contrast is a gorgeously simple plugin that tells you how badly you have failed the blind. And so
the heart of sight.
Yeah, the blind includes myself, like very, hard of sight folks. Like if I don't have my glasses on, I won't, there's not a single word I can read on the screen, even the stuff in the middle. For colorblind folks, for anyone with just being old, 10% of people have some kind of eye problem. So it's always good to try and make things sort of accessible. So that's understatement of the century. Accessibility design is it's a whole world. There's people who just do that. But we have looked at this, we saw this thing called APCA algorithm, and it's something that you can turn on and off. And we started to realize that it was giving us a lot better, clear information about how we should and shouldn't use our colors versus the simpler WCAG2, which is this sort of set that is what we might be used to. That's the AA contrast or AAA contrast, 4.5:1 or 7:1 rules, right? So, just looking at this as a normal human being, you might go, that seems okay. That's not the worst in the world. I don't see how that's a 2.8:1 ratio. But when you look at it in an APCA perspective, it tells you exactly what you should be looking at. So light contrast LC gives you a better understanding of the values, and you don't have a colon that you have to write when you are putting this all into your color sets. And so when I first stumbled upon this, it was literally because it was easier to write out. It was easier to write out LC whatever rather than 4.58:1 in the sets. But it turns out it is a much better way of doing things. So, Devin, is there anything that you want to highlight here?
Not especially. You kind of covered it in broad strokes there. So APCA, I'm forever trying to say SPCA. Yeah. APCA. It's the proposal for WCAG 3. So it's not technically in place yet. As you can see there, it says it's like a beta. So WCAG 2 is the current standard, but they are planning APCA, which is going to be WCAG 3, basically. And the change is WCAG is just basically like an A versus B comparison of colors, like literally just if you put them beside each other, what's the contrast? And then the APCA, I think I found it's the advanced perception something. I wrote it out somewhere. So it's more of a contrast, bearing in mind like which one is the foreground, which one is the background, what is the weight of the font, because that all plays into how it's actually perceived by your eye. Like it's a light balance algorithm. Yes. Yeah, checks luminance of the two colors in relation to each other as opposed to just A versus B. So I think on the W3C's own website, they say it's going to like open up to 50% more colors for use. Probably that just, I've seen it expands the yellow range definitely a bit more, so we don't have to use quite so many hideous yellowy brown colors.
Yeah, that's a big
yeah. So it does open it up a little bit more.
Yeah, I mean, orange is a great example. It also sort of works the other way around with grays. So I found that oftentimes it will give me more lenient results than one would expect in these sort of gray states. Whereas in APCA, it kind of says, well, really shouldn't be using this for body text. Although, I mean, it's very difficult. There's very little difference, but the difference that's there will be huge for those of us who have very bright electric colors. So Sonolake, the company that we work for, is they have sort of incredibly electric blues, and for APCA, it makes it sort of gives you a little bit more information on how exactly you can use that. So that's very cool.
Yeah. So those are just two examples of how WCAG current standards would fail that, but APCA, correct, like accepts it, versus this one where WCAG2, the current standard, says that is totally okay because it's just A versus B, but your eyeballs would probably bleed if you had to read anything in that.
Yes, yeah, I do remember, I think, a couple of years back, looking at something that was the sort of red color and going, that can't be, and almost going,
there's no way that's compliant. Like, come on.
And almost going like, maybe we shouldn't always just listen to the computer when we've got to do this by eye,
Yeah. So I think this APCA, which is not official yet, is definitely just trying to make it more human perception acceptable. Like white on purple, you could probably read a decent chunk of text there. It says it's completely fine. Whereas, before you'd be like, no, you can't do that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So as they say, it like opens up a lot more colors, and it's a much more like eye friendly rather than just dumb number kind of system.
Yes, absolutely.
So fingers crossed it comes in properly.
Yeah. Well, either way, I mean, it's not like we need a king stamp on everything we use. We use stuff that's sort of half official,
borderline.
So it's anything.
So we're using those colors already anyway, but you cover your asses and say it's a beta just in case.
Absolutely, yeah. And I mean, we haven't really thought about contrast in this set.
This is for fun.
This is just a little experimenty thing that we put together just for this evening. So yeah, but go ahead and have a look at the file, and then I think that's all we're going to talk about this evening. Is there anything that anyone else wants to talk about or ask questions about? If not, we will leave it there. Thank you so much, Devin, for your help and for stepping in. I appreciate it.
Nice job wrangling variables, because they hurt my brain. It's definitely leaning a little bit more programmatic than I'm comfortable with.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to, like, this is not really the place to have to first hear about variables, right? If you if you are able to get on this, you're able to get on YouTube and go and look at a step-by-step of how to get started. But honestly, the easiest way is to just go and play and enjoy. If someone has done you the courtesy of paying for your Figma.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
I will say, probably the most common or basic use of that, it would be light mode versus dark mode. And in which case, if you're using it for color management, it is worth noting that, like your color styles, when you publish the document, the variables will also publish. So it's not like you're losing color libraries. You just have to implement them in a different way, and they'll still be referenceable throughout your organization.
It's a really good point.
If your company is paid for that.
Dan, you have a question.
I do, yeah. Hey guys. Sorry for joining late. It's
Of
good
course.
what I have caught though. It looks fun. Yeah, I was going to say it's very interesting the change of accessibility stuff. That looks very interesting. Because like you say, a lot of the time the color usage, you're like, I feel like I should be able to use this, but it's telling me that I can't use this. And then on the flip hand, it's like, I probably shouldn't be using this, but it's telling me that I can. So that feels weird. Yeah, at the moment in the company that I'm at, I'm actually looking at changing our design system completely over from like styles into using variables and tokens. Um, so hence why I wanted to join the session this evening. I don't know if you've kind of got any good starting points for that sort of transition. I know I've seen some good like plugins that seem to do a lot of heavy lifting for you, but obviously a lot of time and effort has gone into creating styles in the first place. But I know as we move into variables, sort of naming conventions and things, yeah, it feels like a little bit of a rabbit hole. And it's, have you got any advice on the best place to start for that kind of thing? That'd be great.
Sure. So, you know, we were in a situation where we were starting a new project with a new client. The client was giving us great, it was best possible environment, right? The client loved us. They were very happy to have a very long leash. But they said, let's chat every 2 weeks. We had a lot of other stuff going on. So we decided, let's get this started from the ground up. But we'd already built our styles, right? Our circular style things. We didn't use plugins. I didn't research plugins. I didn't think that anyone had built something that was A, going to be free, and B, was going to do the perfect job without me having to redo stuff anyway. So I just sort of put a podcast in and spent 2 hours manually changing everything, which is probably not a great way of doing it, but it really, I guess it depends on how many colors you have. Can I
Also an opportunity to tidy up.
Yeah, absolutely. A great opportunity to tidy up. What I would say is we went through a couple of iterations of our colors, and what we found was the most useful was to split them up between primitive and dynamic, especially if you're doing a dark mode, light mode thing. But even if you're not, if you've got a system where you've got certain colors that you want to use in buttons and so on and so forth, those sort of what you might call design token names, the block background, illustration line art, button background, general background, having those sort of dynamic colors as a sort of second step is really valuable. So what I would say is first write in your primitive colors. So name your primitive colors, whatever they're called. If you're using Tailwind, you can talk to your devs, but if you're using Tailwind, these are going to be colors that say blue 900, blue 800, blue 700, and so forth. And then take those colors and use them to create dynamic sets. So if I create a new color and no, it's not what that said. If I create a new color and I call it whatever, cheesecake, my go-to nothing word, I can, instead of choosing a color like this, I can go to libraries and I can say reference another color variable. So cheesecake is background. So in this case, background would be your blue 700. And then when you are using these colors, always reference the dynamic colors, not the primitive. So I was naughty. I did this once or twice. You'll see here, I've used illustration line art, and that's okay because that's a dynamic color. But I've used orange, and I should not have done that, because if I take this to this side, you'll see that the orange is staying orange, which is not what you would want. Whereas the illustration line art color is doing what I'm expecting it to do. So I would say start with primitives and then build those dynamic colors, whether you call them design tokens or whatever the case is. that sort of two-step approach is a good way to go. And then I would also just say generally, it's always good to talk to your developers and see what they want. I don't know. Yeah, just figure out. Yeah,
that's very useful. Yeah, we currently we have been using Tailwind. They're also like using React for a lot of the projects that we're working in at the moment. So the naming conventions in the design system tend to follow, either like primary, 100 to 900, secondary, the same range. So we kind of have three kind of main styles, and as you normally would do, like a grays palette, and then just shades, which would be like your black and white. So I'm hoping it's going to be quite straightforward, like the color side of things. But the variables coming in, what it's solving from a styles problem where you need to globally change, like, I don't know, a text color, and actually all your strokes and everything have changed everywhere. I think that's what's going to really benefit. So I appreciate that explanation. That's great.
Absolutely, man. That's what this whole thing's about. So the one thing, I mean, how would you? It's very difficult when you have to do that swapping on the objects itself. But I would look at plugins in that space, because there's probably something that can help you out there.
Yeah, I think one of the product that we're working on at the moment is kind of in a public beta environment. So it is fairly like early on in infancy, whereas a lot of the other design systems are quite mature. So I'm quite lucky that I'm in this situation at the moment, that I can kind of make these decisions earlier on rather than later on. So a lot of the stuff that's been put together in terms of files and the designs and components, I think it's okay if they break a little bit for now, because it's still fairly early on.
Yeah, that's a magic place to be, right? Yeah. You don't want to be 2 years in and then decide that you're going to change everything.
Yeah,
for sure. Well, love to see how you get on. If you tell us how it goes, maybe next time you can share with us a bit of how that went.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll reach out to you guys on either socials or LinkedIn as well.
Yeah, sure.
Keep you guys updated. That'd be cool.
Yeah, we're most useful on Slack, but there is a Discord as well. If
cool.
you're a Discord person, but yeah, we're always on Slack.
Both options work. That's fine.
Awesome. And feel free to sort of on Slack, anyone who wants to either talk or wants to sort of recommend something that they want to see more of. I promise I'm trying my best to make sure that it's not just me talking the whole time. But yeah, so let me know if you want to talk about anything, or if you want someone else to talk about something. Just chuck it in the Slack group, and we'll do our best to accommodate.
Have you got a link to the group somewhere for us?
We can get that for you. We can get that for you right now.
Thank you.
For sure. Invite people, copy link, send link on chat. There you go.
Thank you very much.
Awesome, Dan. Great talking to you. And thank you everyone for joining. And we do these once a month, first Thursdays usually, unless something weird happens. And so if that's everything, we'll head out for this evening. And thank you guys so much for joining.
Yeah, thanks
everyone. Very much. Look forward to catching you next time.
Awesome. Take care of yourselves.
See ya.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.